article sent in, and this one is on the 17 worst superhero movies of all time based on their Rotten Tomatoes scores. Now, this article is from just slightly less than a year ago. Madam Web is in here, but if they made this article today, Kraven the Hunter would also be in here with its Rotten Tomatoes score is at a 16%. When we look at the first one on here, it's a 17%. So it would have made it onto this list. And before we dive into this, if you want to throw your picks for the worst down below in the comment section, what's interesting is as much as we pick on certain franchises, the DCEU, there's no DCEU movies in this list. And as much as sometimes people go after Thor, Love and Thunder, and the Marvels, and MCU's lost its way, those movies are nowhere near this list. Like, the lowest rated MCU film, I think currently it's Quantumania, has a Rotten Tomatoes score that's still about 3 times that of the best scored movie on this list. Point of reference, these are movies that nobody defends, or almost nobody defends. Some of them are movies you've probably never even heard of or have barely ever heard of. With that said, let's get started with their list. Number 17, Hellboy 2019 with a 17%. Now, I'll say this. I didn't mind this movie. Did I think it was great? No. I was pretty surprised at just how bad the reviews were and how few people liked it. It, to me, had a good bit of schlocky fun, where there's just so many gross out bits with like heads being ripped off and stuff. I'm actually watering. It's grosser than that what happens to the heads in the movie. There's enough like schlock value gross out stuff that like it entertained me enough. It wasn't great. I haven't rewatched it, but I also didn't think it was the utter disaster. And there's a side to it that it felt like people were overly harsh on the film, playing the comparison game, that it's not Guillermo del Toro, it's not a continuation of Ron Perlman, and people were really mad that instead of getting the movie people wanted, that almost certainly would have been a better movie, even as the person that I'm not as dismissive of this, Guillermo del Toro's film would have been dramatically better. Instead of doing that, they gave us a reboot that was just not great. Maybe some of it's I like David Harbour, so it's kind of fun to see him in the part. Also got to give a shout out to Tony Movie Chappie, talked with me and Cody Leach at MegaCon a few years back, giving his defense of this film, which was a good time, and he was passionate in his defense of this film. So shout out to Tony Movie Chappie, who is frequently in the comment section. Number 16 with the same Rotten Tomato score, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So this is an adaptation of an Alan Moore storyline graphic novel, and one of the many reasons why Alan Moore wants nothing to do with Hollywood anymore, where he feels like they continually took his projects and just ruined them, interpreted them entirely wrong, and you get these terrible adaptations, and this being one of the examples. As someone that's never read the Alan Moore graphic novels, I thought this movie was fine. It wasn't great. It didn't make me mad. I was kind of surprised how angry everyone else felt at the film when I watched it back in the day. Maybe I've just always been a little bit too forgiving about movies, but you know, and maybe some of it is, you know, Sean Connery at the tail end of his career when he was doing some of his finals. This might have been his last movie. I don't remember, but it was like he just kind of stopped after this film. It's just like one of the last times we got to see Sean Connery in a movie, pulling together all of these characters of fiction. I dug it. I'm not defending its greatness by any means, but it didn't bother me the way that it bothered other people. So I wouldn't, like when I think of worst comic book movies, I don't think of this film. Today's Today's video is brought to you by Factor. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition for this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes. This year I've been trying to eat a lot better and work out more. Factor makes it so much easier and it's so much quicker to eat something that tastes great that also fits in my diet. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience you can't beat. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, choose between things like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. I either go with Keto or Protein Plus because I'm a high protein, low carb kind of guy. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab and go snacks, and more add-ons. I like their protein smoothies to kick off my day, once again, because I really like protein. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. With another 17%, we have Spawn from 1997. Gotta be honest, somehow I've never seen this film. I remember when it came out. I watched the Spawn HBO animated show at the time that this came out. I like Michael Jai White. I think I even watched the HBO behind the scenes on the making of this movie, but I never saw this film. This is another one that feels a bit like, I don't know, like it's the sort of film that kind of got more forgotten by time than hated by time. Even you look at the movies that people very quickly mention in the comment section and they immediately go, Superman 4! There's not a hatred for Spawn and like throwing targets on Spawn the way there is towards some of those other movies. So, but I can't comment because I haven't actually seen that one. Number 14 on the list, Morbius. And, you know, this is the first of a pair of these Sony Spider-Man-less universe movies that's on here. Craven would have been on here as well. We mentioned that before. We'd mentioned. I think this is just. These are just movies that were always ill-conceived, taking Spider-Man villains and making them standalone anti-heroes in their own movies without having Spider-Man. That was always a pretty bad idea that was probably going to have limited results from it. And then every single one of them, even the Venom movies, feel like they microwaved the script and then tried to fix it in post. Like it's well documented that Morbius went through years of rewrites. They completely changed the ending of it. One of the investigator guys gave interviews talking about how they changed everything. And they did that with all those movies. Like, I think Morbius is a pretty watchable bad movie. I think it has enough of its unique vibe because it's a little bit horror and, of course, vampires in the world of superhero stuff that kind of makes it have something that pops a little bit. But it's also this very choppy movie where clearly they reworked it and duct taped things together and subplots were cut out and things were reshot. It's very obvious that that's what happened with this film. And, you know, that when you do that, you have a movie that's technically speaking, a bad movie, even if it has some superficial entertainment value. 13, The Spirit. Once again, this is one that I have not seen. We talked about this in one about bad casting. I was curious about the film when I first saw the trailers because it had that Sin City look to it, where it's hyper stylized, tried to look like we're taking frames from the comics and putting them onto the big screen. And, you know, Frank Miller was really excited about it. And so it had a more maybe artistic flourish to it because of how stylized it was. And the trailers didn't really look like anything else we'd ever seen. Then the reviews themselves were dreadful. They were terrible for the film. So I never watched it, and it's never seemed worth watching. That no one has phrased it as being so bad that it's funny, and no one has phrased it as it's good enough to watch. So it's just kind of one of the movies forgotten by time. 12, a movie that wish I could was forgotten by time. Howard the Duck, the comic book movie which George Lucas produced. George Lucas did a trilogy of movies. What were they? Star Wars. And then he did this other, I don't know, like throwback adventure, Indiana Jones. And then he went, what's next? And he went, Howard the Duck. So I didn't watch this back when it first came out. I watched it back when I was doing a ranking of every Marvel movie. And it was impressively awful. Just so ill-conceived. Like, it's the kind of movie that if you watch this film with your buddies, like wanting to watch a so bad it's good movie, it delivers so much great material because it's like there's naked ducks with duck boobs. There's so much innuendo about human and duck relations where you're like, whoa, what on earth is going on here? It's like fish out of water, weird humor stuff at the beginning, and then it's like a wacky adventure in the back half. Just such a wild, wacky movie that was... I don't know what Mr. Lucas was thinking, but it absolutely did not work for me. But if you want something wild and crazy that's very different, there it is. Number 11, Madam Web. And once again, this is one of these Sony Spider-Man list universe movies, even more ill-conceived than Morbius. Morbius, if you say living vampire, like that's an anti-hero, that you can see how there's a hook there that could work. As opposed to, let's take a character that's like the guy in the chair, the lady in the chair, to a team of superheroes, but it's not about them in superhero mode. It's the prequel to the origin story for the lady in the chair, for the other ladies, for C- grade Spider-Man side characters. And you go, what? That's a terrible idea. And it's another one where it went through constant rewrites. The Dakota said this. It's been reported. The leaked plot line was supposed to be like the Terminator, where the main bad guy is trying to kill Mama Parker, pregnant with Peter Parker. And I guess they went, that's too dark. So then they're trying to kill these side characters. And so the whole concept kind of got lost. Another one, very obviously reshot, re-edited, fixed with ADR. ADR is automated dialogue replacement. It's when the actors go into the studio after a movie is shot to replace audio in sequences where the mics on stage didn't pick up good audio, so they're just trying to replicate the performance. But the other thing, it's used to fix plot holes or fill in the gaps. So what you do is you show the back of a character's head in a conversation, and then you do ADR to replace what was said, to fix the plot, to duct tape some story points together. This movie's filled with that stuff. But just bad filmmaking based off of a bad idea. Bringing us into the top 10, one of the widely regarded as one of the worst comic book movies of all time. Not too big of a surprise, Batman and Robin is on the list with 12%. Only 1 in 10 critics said, Batman and Robin, you guys should go see that movie. And it's just an incredibly ill-conceived movie. That Batman Forever was a hit, and people responded well to it. And it's an example of the executives and the director learning all of the wrong lessons. And they went, people loved the camp. People loved that it was a toy commercial and that there's nipples on the suits. So let's make it more kiddie, but also more sexual. These ideas go together, right? These are good ideas to mesh together. And that's what they did. And so everything that was probably the weakest aspects of Batman and Batman Forever was cranked up to 10. And you get this movie that just everyone is embarrassed about it. Everybody knows that was we're in the wrong direction. But to its credit, or to his credit, Joel Schumacher 100% owned that. And he said, if this movie disappointed anybody, if anyone saw it and they feel like they wasted their money, that's entirely on you. Put that on me. I made this movie. And he went, wow, you made a movie that ruined Batman, which I'm mad about. I respect that you fully owned that. On an officially released thing, that's awesome. With the same score, Jonah Hex, and this is an example of a movie that you watch it And it is Morbius, Madam Web level of just chopped to pieces, where they made a movie and they went, this is bad, so I guess it's best to make the movie really short than to have it long and bad. Let's do a short and bad movie. And so you watch through it and it just feels like there's big chunks of the movie missing. It's skipping over things. You're like trying to it's a movie where you're like, the plot here is very simple, but for some reason I'm still struggling to follow what's happening because everything is underdeveloped and like character motivations are unexplained because it's just like, so everything's kind of moving around in such a bizarre way. But yeah, it's just an incompetently made film. And whether that's the original script was incompetent or they killed it in the editing room, I don't know which one it is. The movie they gave us is incomprehensible. And you feel bad because it was like Josh Brolin's first big comic book movie and it's really bad. And then Megan Fox is like trying to follow up Transformers and she ends up in one of the worst comic book movies of all time. Number 8, Elektra. This is the spinoff from Ben Affleck's Daredevil. She was a side character in that supposedly died in the film, and then there's a tease that maybe she's alive, and they went off and they did an Elektra film. I've never thought this movie was terrible. It's not that bad. It's just it's like the Thor Dark World kind of situation. A professionally made, painfully mediocre film. Now, Dark World had a budget 4 or 5 times bigger. This is like a B-movie action film, comic book mediocrity. It's that sort of thing. But like it didn't have just like this incompetence to it. It's just doesn't do anything to leave much of a mark. You don't remember it. And going back and rewatching it after watching the Daredevil show, you realize just how much of the Daredevil lore is actually in this movie with Stick, played by Terrence Stamp. I was going to say Terrence Howard. That's someone very different. Terrence Stamp. Zod is Stick in it, which is cool to see. It's got martial arts fights in it. The Hand is in it. And it's directed by Rob Bowman, who is a huge director in the world of The X-Files. And so this is one of the projects where he's trying to transition over into films after the end of The X-Files. He did Reign of Fire with Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey, did this film. Neither one of them did great, so it never really took off. But I don't, like Elektra, I think I don't feel this one should be on here. It's not great. It's not terribly far outside of this list. But it's just a movie that's painfully mediocre, not painfully bad. Number 7, Fan 4 Stick, Josh Trank's Fantastic Four from 10 years back. This is another infamously bad one that you expect to be on here. And this is one where we basically know the backstory of the train wreck that was this film, where they hired Josh Trank off the success of Chronicle, and they suddenly given this enormous, much larger project, Fantastic Four. Going from small little film to basically being the CEO of being a blockbuster. That's a big jump. And I'm surprised more people don't respond as badly as he did to this. But they give him this role, and then right before they're supposed to start shooting, they had him cut like $20 million off the budget. So he had to cut a couple action sequences very last minute right before they started shooting. And then while they were making the movie, he apparently like just snapped and had a mental breakdown or something like that. And there's all these weird reports of him trashing hotel rooms, not showing up. He was stoned. What's true, what's not, I don't know. But it seems pretty clear he did not respond well to the pressure of being promoted from small indie director to working for a major film studio with a major IP. And like I said, I'm surprised there aren't a lot more people that crack under that pressure. But he snaps. So the production of the main shooting of the movie goes weird as can be. And then afterwards, they try and fix it in post. And they bring in new people and do reshoots with other people. And you watch the movie, and parts of it work pretty well. Like, it's darker than you'd expect. And you get to the halfway point, and it's like the movie just like they become the Fantastic Four, and it's like the movie just falls off a cliff. Like, the first time I watched it, I was like, what are people talking about? Like, it's bland, but this isn't so bad. And then it just falls off a cliff. It's like a movie that has an overly long first act, No middle act. The middle act is like 5 minutes long, and then it does a time jump, and then you're suddenly in the third act, and it's terrible. And so it's like a great example of like, it's important to watch bad movies, like truly bad, incompetently made films, so you have a point of reference for other films. Like, there's movies that had big reshoots and they fall apart, and there's movies that have big reshoots and you can feel it, but it's okay. Captain America Brave New World had reshoots and you can feel it, but the movie works well enough. It's duct taped together, but it works. Fantastic Four reshoots and it just implodes, it falls apart. There's no duct tape together, it just fell apart. And you can feel the reshoots, there's things missing, you can see terrible wigs on people's head, but it's a disaster of a film. Number 6, Steel. This is another one of those just horribly ill-conceived movies that Warner Brothers has a long history of bad ideas and greenlighting the wrong things, learning the wrong lessons. But Steel, John Henry Irons, is one of the Supermen from the reign of Superman. Superman died in the early 90s, and there were 4 different Supermen that emerged. We're trying to figure out who's the real Superman, who's all these different things. And one of them was John Henry Irons, a guy that was like, there's no Superman, I'm going to do my part. And pretty cool character. Like, he's a major part of Superman and Lois, and you really dig him. Like, he's a nice addition to the show. But he's supposed to exist in a world with Superman. And you want an actor to play him, not Shaq. Shaquille O'Neal in the late 90s was a force to be reckoned with. Just like pop culture icon of just like this interesting, weird guy. Interesting because he's just like basketball player, freakishly tall, wants to be a rapper, actor, doing all this stuff. And the allure of Shaq remains to this day. He put out his own candy last year, and like, my son wasn't alive in the 90s to know Shaq and all of that. Wanted to get the Shaq candy. So we bought some Shaq candy a week or 2 ago. And we bought it for the Super Bowl, I believe. And, you know, he's on Hot Ones and memed out of it. Like, there's something about Shaq. He had his own video game, Shaq Fu. But you can have all of the allure you want. But, Shaq is not an actor. He cannot carry a movie, and he should not be John Henry Irons. And so you just get a really bad movie that was ill-conceived. Of like all the things that you could do with Superman lore and stuff like that. Yikes. Number 5, and as a heads up, the final few on here are like D-grade superhero characters that these movies nobody saw, so I'm not going to say much about them. So we're really looking at the final couple movies here. Number 5, or next to last on here, Catwoman with an 8%. Now, if you're not my age, you might not realize this, but ever since Batman Returns, they were trying to make a Catwoman movie because Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns was such a standout character. People loved her, and it's like, let's spin her off and make her own movie. And they spent the 90s writing scripts for a Catwoman movie starring Michelle Pfeiffer. And maybe Tim Burton was going to direct them, and then you have to do the Superman movie, and none of that ended up happening. So instead, they kept trying to make a Catwoman movie work. And classic example of the people that are making the decisions don't love the source material, and they don't understand the audience. And so they hire all the wrong people, they greenlight all the wrong ideas, and you can perhaps see something in their mind that you go, Halle Berry, she's popular in this genre as Storm. Now let's put her in the lead. Won an Oscar, put her in the lead. She's hot. Let's put her in the movie and highlight that she's hot. And Sharon Stone was kind of on the decline by this point in time, but was, red hot all throughout the 90s and known for her beauty. And let's do a plot about beauty and makeup. You can see like maybe something in there where you go, okay, I think I know where you're heading with this. But then you see the movie in the plot, it's literally about an evil makeup woman that has evil makeup that either makes you ugly, or it turns you into gives you rock skin that turns you into a super villain. One of the two, depending on what the plot demands. Battling Catwoman, who's not Selena Kyle, who was brought back by Egyptian cats. You go, What does that have anything to do with Selena Kyle, Batman, Batman Returns, anything? It has nothing to do with any of it. So they took popular character, Catwoman, and did this whole other thing with it that nobody wanted. There's no demand for that plot. There's no demand for not Selena Kyle brought back by Egyptian cat gods to battle an evil makeup woman. Nobody wants that movie. But dumb executives don't understand. Like, this would be like, you could get 10 comic book store owners and tell them to bring in 10 of their biggest fans, or just like bring out normal people that went to go see Batman Returns. Bring in everybody. Who's interested in that pitch? How many hands are going to come? Not one hand is going to go up. If you say Halle Berry as Selena Kyle is a cat thief that's like she's bad, but she gets caught in this crime and she ends up having to save somebody, people go, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Let's do that. But they didn't do that. They didn't, like, cat burglar, like with a heart that's not evil, but she's selfish, like crazy. We talked about this in one of these videos not too long ago, but was Halle Berry miscast or was the movie terrible? I don't think she was miscast. She's just in the wrong movie. She's not miscast. The writer, director, producer, executive, all of them, fire all of them. Bring in someone that's read a comic before. Get anybody. I'm not a screenwriter, but I could come up with something better than this. You give me Halle Berry, $50 million, and let me write a script. Like, I could do something better than this. Because it's made by people that don't understand and don't care about the source material or anything like that. All right, last one on here, because if you look at the last Son of Mask, I actually haven't seen this one. I, of course, saw The Mask, but they did Son of Mask. Nobody went to go see this movie because, it got a 6%. It looked and sounded terrible. Then you have Zoom. I didn't even realize this. I guess this is, I don't know if it's an adaptation or whatever, but another one that I never saw Zoom. It looked kiddie and got terrible reviews. And then Max Steel, a 0%. Quite impressive, but once again, I don't know anybody that has seen Max Steel's adaptation of a toy. Okie dokie. So the last one on our list of movies I have seen and that you have seen and that people have actually talked about, Supergirl, the movie from 1984, starring Helen Slater. And this is another infamously bad superhero movie where the music in this movie is actually great. They brought in a great composer, so the music to it is great. I actually put this movie on when I go to bed a lot, because I don't actually want to watch it, but I like the music. It's just kind of black background noise. Same with Superman 4. Like the music as background noise. Don't want to watch the movie. And if I put on the original film or two, I'll just watch the movie. But Supergirl, just a shockingly incompetent script. Weirdly incompetent script. Like, you just watch through it, and everything that happens, you can see where there's something there. It's a movie that feels like they had three different people write three different scripts to the movie, and they were walking and they crashed into each other and they mashed them together and they just went with it. Like, the most obvious example of this is that the plot has a ticking clock where Supergirl, because she's a silly child, does something stupid that causes her city to lose its power core, so she goes to Earth to try and find it. She gets to Earth and it discovers she can fly, and so she just starts flying around. And then she sees a school and goes, I should do that. And so she signs up for school and starts going to school. She's trying to find something to stop everyone that she knows and loves from dying. She's trying to stop her way of life, her culture, from ceasing to exist. But she gets distracted because, like everyone else, she wants to go to school. Like, it's just utter nonsense. Like, it feels like a plot point from a different script that they accidentally put into this movie, and the villain is a witch. Like, there's all these just terrible ideas. The script, it doesn't flow. There's not a logic to it. It's a bunch of ideas that are not compatible with one another. But so, it's an interesting one. The writer of Supergirl 1984 also wrote Masters of the Universe 1987. Masters of the Universe 1987 is exponentially better than Supergirl. Actually, last night I was watching Smallville, and the episode I watched about Perry White was directed by the director of this film. But interesting, if you look at this list, you don't have Superman 4 on the list. You don't have Superman 3 on the list. No DCEU. A lot of those movies that people pick on, not on the list. Most of these clips are pulled from my Patreon live streams. I do about 6 live streams every single month. For $2 per month, $20 per year, you can get access to all the exclusive videos and live streams. For $5 per month, you get your name on my end card. At the top tier, you get a 30-minute video chat with me each month. The link down below in the description has more information.